So the other day I saw something online for the world's first transgender beer called No Label by the Scottish brewing company BrewDog. Let's explore this a little further. My initial reaction was, wow, that seems really interesting. Let me read the post about it. And so I read this post that they had made, the brewing company had made on their website, where they explained that they use female to male hops. Essentially, they're using hops that switch sex from female and become male flowers. So I was like, well, that's intriguing in a way that sort of naturalizes the transgender experience for those of us who do alter our sexes in whichever way, whether it be taking cross-sex hormones or whether it be having surgery. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting concept, an interesting parallel. But then they followed that up with, we use these to emphasize that, just like humans, beer can be whatever the hell it wants to be and proud of it. Which, in a way, is this sort of powerful statement, but anyway, we'll get back to that one later. I first read that as like, okay, interesting, but we'll go back to that. Next, I saw that they're donating all of the profits from this beer, which is amazing, to an organization called Queerest of the Queer, who will specifically give it to charities that help trans youth. And that is amazing. All profits. We're saying all of the profits are going to this organization. Neat. And not only that, but the co-founder of Queerest of the Queer, the organization, fully supports what BrewDog is doing, saying that they had conversations with the company about moving beyond the LNG, and sort of this creativity and creative process came from these conversations. So that's really intriguing as well. And last but not least for my initial reaction is they do blend ale and lager. So what they're saying is essentially they're combining this binary world of ale and lager and mixing it up. So emphasizing the non-binariness of this beer within its own context in the ale world, in the ale and lager world. And simultaneously, as I was reading through it, I liked that they were putting this focus and emphasis on non-binary trans individuals. So basically comparing this no label beer to non-binary trans individual experiences, which is a very specific group within the trans community that does not get very much attention and needs that attention. So it is interesting and neat that they're focusing not on binary trans identity, but purposefully on the non-binary. So very interested after reading this. So at this point, I have only read what BrewDog put out about the reasoning behind this beer, the explanation of the beer, and I just posted on Facebook being like, interesting, not sure how I feel about this beer and trans experience metaphor going on here, but it seems pretty harmless, if anything. It seems like at least it's bringing attention. So then I did the right thing and I decided to further explore BrewDog, get a little bit of their history, and see really what is going on behind the scenes here, because this is over in Europe and I'm in the US, so what do I really know? What I do know is this. BrewDog put out an ad in September for a fundraising campaign, and I watched this ad. I will link to it as well as some other articles below so you can read up more on it. But this ad was extremely distasteful. They parodied transgender sex workers and the homeless, as well as many other things, essentially with this idea of, don't make us have to do this. Help us raise the funds for our next location or beer or whatever. But they're not actually at risk for having to do those things, and making light of homelessness and of trans sex workers and making fun of these situations in general is extremely distasteful. So 25,000 people signed a petition saying take down the ad and apologize, and BrewDog did not do that. So after finding out about that ad, I decided I would reread what BrewDog had released about this beer again, and one thing stood out to me immediately was they talk about how the plant changes sex from female to male. Sure, plants can change sex, but plants do not experience gender. So equating this plant changing sexes, not only that, but within the binary system, while they're also trying to say this is a no-label beer for non-binary experiences, except you're listing a binary experience with a plant, so I'm confused there, is problematic for a million reasons. Another thing is that they're essentially using the word sex. This plant switches sex. Well, one of the big issues in the trans community is educating the public on the fact that sex does not equal gender. It is being able to distinguish between these two words that we can begin to converse about and understand transgender issues. It is through saying that sex and gender are essentially the same thing, which this article does do, that many of the misunderstandings and harassment involving the transgender community come to light. You need to understand that sex and gender are different. They are not the same, and a plant experiencing a sex transformation is not the same as a non-binary person experiencing gender in their day-to-day lives. So sorry, I could feel myself getting a little negative and tense towards the end there, but the truth is this: I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I think that there's an equal amount of pros and cons to this no label beer situation. I think it is interesting for sure, but I think that the history and maybe where it came from is slightly problematic. I think that's where it leaves this bitter taste in my mouth. It does somewhat feel like a really kind of poor execution, and I'm curious to see what others have to say about this. So if you want to look below, I'll put the links to some of the articles, and please feel free to leave some comments. I know it's we talk around this issue all the time, and it's are these good people, are these bad people, is this good for the trans community or is this bad for the trans community? I just kind of tried to go through that and break it down by these chunks of this is problematic because, or this is okay, or here's the history, and see what's going on. So please feel free to write your comments below. I'll be back next Tuesday, and thank you so much for watching. Alrighty, peace.